3 true lockdown horror stories. Number 3, The Vanishing Hitchhiker. I'm going to start with the one that's not technically a horror story, but it just weirds me out thinking about it now. So, when I was 19, my friends and I would drive around all the time just for fun. It was a summer in Wisconsin, and there wasn't much to do outside of school or work, so we would go cruising. One of our favorite things to do was to drive around looking for trucks with bales of hay in the back. If we saw one, we would follow them into town and then pull up beside them at a stoplight and yell, "Got hay," really loud. The people in the truck would freak out every time, and we thought it was hilarious. I mean, it still is kind of funny, but it also seems a little creepy if someone was actually scared enough to think that we were trying to kill them. Well, one night we were driving around and we passed a car that had been following us for a while. We thought it was funny to try out our new "Got hay" prank on them. So, when we got to a stoplight, we pulled up beside them and yelled, "Got hay." The guy in the car looked at us, looked at the bales in the back of his car, and calmly said, "No, you got hay." He then proceeded to drive off. We were confused and a little creeped out. My friend and I looked at each other and then at the bales in our car and realized that we didn't have any hay in the back of our car, and this guy literally had bales of hay in the back. We called him a psycho and drove off. We never did see him again. But sometimes when I'm driving around, I'll look in the back seat just to make sure I don't have any hay back there. 2. Clown House. When I was young, my family and I used to go camping every summer in a small tent near a lake in Michigan. The small town nearby had a population of less than 500 people, and I never saw another camper during our entire stay. There was one house that I always noticed from afar that seemed a little creepy. It was an old Victorian-style house with peeling paint and boarded-up windows. However, one day my dad decided that we should check out the house and see if anyone was there. As we approached the house, my sister and I started freaking out because we could now see inside and it looked like a real-life version of the Bates Motel from Psycho. We turned around to tell my dad that we wanted to go, but he had already started walking up the path to the front door. And before we knew it, he was knocking on the door. After a few minutes, the door opened and this old, frail woman stood before us. She must have been in her late 80s and she had a shock of white hair and a face full of wrinkles. Without saying a word, she stepped aside and let my dad walk in. I begged my dad to come back out, but he insisted that we should check out the house. That is when I started to get freaked out because I was pretty sure that my dad was about to find a meat cleaver or something. After what felt like an hour, my dad came back out with the woman and invited them over to our campsite to have dinner with us. I refused to go near her, and my mom told her to stay away from my sister and me. She stayed mostly quiet during dinner, but she did tell us that she lived alone in the house and had no family. After they left, my sister and I told our dad that we weren't ever going over to their house again. But that night, my dad decided that we were all going to go back over to her house for a midnight tour. We all piled into the car and drove over to her house. When we knocked, she answered immediately and led us around the house. She showed us her collection of porcelain dolls, which was one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen. These weren't the cute, pretty porcelain dolls that you'd see at an antique store. These were grotesque and disturbing. They had blank stares, crooked smiles, webbed fingers and toes. It was too much for me, and I started crying because I was certain that they were cursed. The woman then took us down into her basement where it got even worse. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling and trash was piled everywhere. She led us to the back corner where there was a cage made of rebar. She told us that she used it for animal testing. Then she pulled out a rusty meat cleaver and told us that she used it for home defense. I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. I think I blacked out because the next thing I remember is being in the car with my family and speeding away from the house. I don't know if I was asleep or unconscious, but I woke up and we were at our campsite. It's been years since then, and I still can't sleep with the lights off. Whenever I close my eyes, I see those dolls staring at me. One more story. Number 1. Pandemic Panic. This happened back in March of 2020 when everything was shut down. The unemployment rate went up, everyone was hoarding toilet paper, and we were all learning how to bake bread. I was working from home and getting groceries delivered. I hardly ever went out, but I needed to get some clothes from the mall. So I put on my mask and headed to the only place that I would go during the lockdown, Target. I was going to buy some sweatpants and maybe a hoodie. It was one of the first days that they opened back up, so I thought it would be relatively empty. But as soon as I walked through the doors, I was greeted by the most horrifying scene. It looked like a war zone. Store employees were running around frantically trying to stock shelves that were completely bare. Customers were shoving each other out of the way to get the last can of refried beans. There were abandoned carts everywhere filled with trash and dirty diapers. It was absolute chaos. I started to panic, and I couldn't help but think that this is it. This is how it's going to end. Trampled to death by a horde of angry moms looking for the last pack of goldfish. I tried to keep my cool and stick to the perimeter of the store like my mom taught me, but I was getting more and more overwhelmed. I started hearing people yell, "Get back, lady, those are mine," or "Hey, watch it, dude." I even saw a fight break out in the cereal aisle. That's when I knew that I had to get out of there. I dropped my shopping cart and ran for the exit. As I sprinted out the automatic doors, I heard the store intercom crackle to life and a monotone voice announced, "Attention shoppers, due to unforeseen circumstances, this store will be closing early. Please exit the store promptly." And that's when I saw it, the reason why the store was in complete chaos. A figure stood at the front of the store in front of the closed-off employee entrance. They were wearing a hazmat suit and a gas mask. I didn't know what to do. I was frozen in fear. Then I heard a voice say, "Sir, I need you to come over here." I turned around and saw a police officer motioning for me to come closer. He removed his mask and explained what had happened. Apparently, someone had called in a bomb threat and they evacuated the store. And that's when I heard a second voice say, "Hold it right there." I turned around and saw the most horrifying thing I've ever seen. The man in the hazmat suit. He was slowly removing his mask. I could see his eyes underneath, and they weren't even human. They were glowing red. I screamed and ran as fast as I could until I reached my car. I jumped in and locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, catching my breath until I heard footsteps. I looked over and saw the man in the hazmat suit. He was walking toward my car, and he was getting closer and closer. I rolled up the window just as he reached my car, and I saw his face. He had a wide smile on his face, and he was holding 2 thumbs up. I rolled down the window and asked, What's going on?" He looked at me and said, "I just wanted to say that this is a great costume. You look so realistic." I was so relieved that it was just a prank, but I couldn't help but wonder who would have called the cops. Now watch, Scariest Places to Be Alone, or click this other video instead.